Is this a biased take? Do you believe it too? Let's talk about Gunnar Stockton and Carson Beck. David Pollock, former Georgia football legend, former ESPN, he's doing his own thing now. He's coaching high school football too. He, on his podcast, and I had to go back and listen to it to get a little bit more of the context, but he said he thinks that Gunnar Stockton's going to have a better season this year than Carson Beck did for Georgia a year ago. And I know if you're a Georgia fan, that's the optimism that you either want to have or that you do have when you're looking ahead at the 2025 Georgia Bulldogs. And look, he gave his reasons, and I think the reasons are pretty valid. I want to see things first, right? I'm always a little bit more of a skeptic when it comes to, well, I guess I'm more of a skeptic in general than an optimist. Sometimes that's not great, but I want to see things happen. And I saw a good bit with Gunnar Stockton last year, but let's get into David Pollock's take. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post here. We're talking about the quarterbacks a lot. We're talking about Gunnar Stockton a lot recently because the further along we get into this process, the clearer the image gets. And to me, that image is that he is QB1 for the Georgia Bulldogs this coming season. I don't know that there is an open competition of sorts. Ryan Puglisi is receiving reps with the first team, but from everything I've been told, everything I've seen, it's Gunnar Stockton's job to lose at the very least, if you want to frame it that way. And I think that he's got a firm grasp on the starting quarterback spot for Georgia. So David Pollock said that he said what he said, and I wrote down a few of the other things he said, kind of his reasoning. He said we saw in 2023 Carson Beck with McConkey and Bowers was different than what we saw this past year. And he went on to say because Georgia's weapons were atrocious in 2024. So he's talking about Arian Smith, Dominic Lovett, Dylan Bell, Delp, Lucky, ETN, all the weapons from last year. He said they were atrocious. Well, some of them are going to be the primary weapons for Georgia this season. And that portion of it, I guess David and other people think it just has to be better, right? Georgia led the country in drop passes last season. That was a big topic of conversation for a while. It still is as we analyze what Georgia has with new wide receivers. Pollock went on to say he thinks the receiving core is at least 50% better. I don't know how you quantify that. I don't know how you come up with that number. I think that that's him just kind of giving a general statement, but I do think that it's better. Okay? Something you have to note. Losing Bowers and McConkey from 23-24, yes, there are going to be downgrades when you see at the NFL level how good they were like that, right? 2 of the top 10 receivers in terms of production in the NFL their rookie seasons. The top receivers on their respective squads. So those guys are obviously not normal players to have on the college football level. Well, then you look a year ago, everyone was still all excited. I came on here talking about how I thought Georgia's receiver room and all the weapons were going to be really good. You think about ETN at running back, and you thought that the Robinsons were going to be healthy. Robinsons weren't healthy. ETN wasn't healthy and missed a game as well due to a suspension. So immediately the running backs weren't as good as you thought they were going to be. The receivers, you knew Bell was going to be there. Smith's doing his 5th year. Dominic Lovett's in year 4. They brought in London Humphreys from the transfer portal from Vanderbilt, and they brought in Colby Young from the transfer portal from Miami. Ra Thomas was set to be back as well. Obviously, he transferred the year before that with Lovett from Mississippi State. And you thought, okay, well, Georgia's got good receivers on the outside. They've kind of got versatility. What happens? Ra Thomas kicked off the team. He has off-the-field issues. Colby Young plays a few games, suspended from the team, off-the-field issues. Arian Smith drops a lot of passes. Dylan Bell doesn't play as well as he did in 23. Dominic Lovett dropped some passes and wasn't really the dynamic weapon I guess people thought he was going to be. Oscar Delp was pretty non-existent for the first couple of months of the season. His production in November surpassed what it did in September and October combined. They didn't go to Lawson Lucky too much, but they did go to him a little bit more than Delp there, especially early on. And they're relying on Cash Jones to be the primary receiving back. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I know that wasn't the plan. And all of a sudden, yes, things fell apart. And Carson Beck fell apart in the middle of the season. October was particularly bad for him. The end of September was particularly bad for him. And he threw 12 interceptions in, a 5-game span? I'm not looking at the numbers. But he did throw 12. And it was rough for Carson Beck. And the weight of the world and the weight of the Georgia fan base comes crashing down on you when you're not playing that well. Will Gunnar Stockton do better this coming year? Well, let's evaluate the weapons. Zachariah Branch came in. Noah Thomas came in. They've got some freshmen. I think Taylor might push for playing time if you just watch the talent with that guy. But we'll see. That's TBD. Dylan Bell is still around. Kirby said he's going to play running back and receiver, or at the very minimum, he's taking reps at both of those spots during spring. So there's versatility there. Nate Frazier, will he take a step forward? I still think there's questions in the running back room. There's a lot of hype around Bo Walker, incoming true freshman who's playing spring. I've been told, Dean's been told, Matt's been told he's doing really well. But the Robinsons are still hurt. Will Bowens, Chauncey Bowens, or Dwight Phillips Jr. step up? And then they've got Nitro Tuggle, who is indefinitely suspended right now, and I do think he will be a key piece in this Georgia wide receiver room. Tight ends are the same. They brought some guys in there for depth, and I think that you'll see Jaden Riddell. He's going to wear number 23. I think he was a true freshman last year. He's going to be a redshirt freshman this year. I think you'll see him make an impact as well as Lawson Lucky and Oscar Delp. The offensive line is a question mark because on paper, the players last year are better than the ones they'll have this year. On paper, you had two All-Americans in Tate Ratledge and Dylan Fairchild. On paper, you had a guy who played 6 years of college football in Xavier Truss. On paper, you had Jared Wilson, who is tabbed as the most athletic offensive lineman in this coming NFL draft. So like I said, when you look at the semantics of it, it looks like, okay, this Georgia offensive line is great. Well, injuries, Wilson deals with injuries. Ratledge deals with injuries. Ernest Green deals with injuries. They get beat in some of these games. Ole Miss, they got beat. They got beat for a good bit of the Alabama game. They got beat. I think you could argue they got beat against Georgia Tech. I actually think that that's just true. So they didn't play up to what we thought they were going to be, what you would project the Georgia offensive line would be. Well, now you've got Drew Bobo at center. Micah Morris will be one of the guards. I believe the tackles will be Freeling and Ernest Green. And then it looks like Daniel Calhoun's the leader in the clubhouse to be the second right guard. Is that all a better situation? Is this a better situation? David Pollack goes on to say, I've spent time with Gunnar. I don't know that I've been a more humble kid. He's an easy kid to cheer for. He watches tape. He grinds. He loves the game of football. He's not the perfect quarterback from a height perspective, from a release perspective. I just think he's got something about him, and I think he's going to do really, really well. So I don't think that Gunnar is as talented as of a thrower of the football as Carson Beck, or a passer, essentially. He's more mobile. He's probably grittier. And I do think Georgia loves him more. Georgia being the fan base, Georgia being the team, the program. I do think that they love Gunnar more. I think Gunnar loves them. There did seem to be a disconnect with Carson Beck. That's hard to speak on, but that's just what it seemed like. Obviously, I'm close to the situation. Now, I think both things can be true, that he might not be quite as talented as Carson Beck or even Ryan Puglisi, but can play better. What numbers did Beck have? Are we basing this off of numbers? Are we basing this off of eye tests? What constitute Gunnar being better? Beck put up 3,485 yards, 28 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Well, I'll tell you what, the 12 interceptions and a couple fumbles, that part is the part that's got to be better. Otherwise, the touchdowns and the yards won't matter as much as long as Georgia's winning games. So, will Gunnar Stockton take care of the football? Was he done in about 6 quarters in 24 and 1.5 quarters in 23, being the Orange Bowl game? We've seen him turn the ball over twice. A fumble against Notre Dame where someone comes off his blind side, he fumbles on a sack, and that really bad interception against Texas, which Kirby took the blame for, and the offensive he puts the blame on the offensive staff for that, even though Gunnar made a bad decision there. So in about 7.5 quarters of football, we've got 2 turnovers, and in 6 of those quarters, they played 2 of the best defenses in college football in Notre Dame and Texas. I do think that you can look at the small sample size of Gunnar Stockton. I think you can look at the situation off the field with Gunnar Stockton, and you can watch him in high school and say, hey, this guy's a playmaker. He's got moxie. The Dogs love him, and the talent's there. The weapons should be better. Should be. I don't know if they will be, because we said this last year, that the weapons were going to be really good again. Will they be better? Will that be the reason Gunnar Stockton plays better? I think they've got to run the football better. I think every unit's got to play better in order for this thing to really get rolling the way they want to. But this was David Pollock's take and my thoughts on it. Again, Ryan Curley from Dawg Post Newsletter, and all that stuff you need to know is in the description of this video down below. Thank you for watching.